The Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree story trailer was a doozy. I know I'm a bit late for a trailer analysis, but today I want to focus specifically on what will be the main theme of the DLC, birth and motherhood. From Software isn't exactly being subtle with their imagery, and when we look closely, we'll see that they've been hinting at this theme from the very moment they announced the DLC. In this video, we're going to break down the birthing imagery in the DLC promo material, and afterwards, I'll offer my own speculations and theories on where the narrative may be heading based on this imagery. I will not be spoiling anything from the recent network tests, so everything we'll be looking at here today has only been shown in the official trailers. Let's dive in. We'll start by looking at the DLC announcement. Shadow of the Erdtree was announced in February of last year with one single image. In this image, we see Miquella looking quite feminine, and I should note quite a bit like Marika, riding Torrent through a field of wheat. Wheat is an historical symbol of fertility and birth in Western cultures. For many millennia, it has represented the birth of civilization, as cultivated wheat gave rise to the earliest civilizations in Mesopotamia many thousands of years ago. The Greek goddess Demeter, who presided over fertility, is often depicted by a stalk of wheat. Wheat has also been used in fertility rites in many cultures throughout Western history, and we know how much these games are influenced by Western symbolism and culture. So this image wants us to know 4 things about the DLC. Miquella will be central to the plot, there is another gigantic tree, the mount that carried us through the lands between once carried Miquella through the lands of Shadow, and the storyline will revolve heavily around birth and motherhood. Next we see of the DLC is the gameplay reveal trailer. One of the first things it reveals is the withered arm, protruding from a ruptured cocoon that looks like an egg, sitting atop a large pelvis. If you had no context on Elden Ring, you would undoubtedly still get major birthing vibes from this image. To put it bluntly, this looks like conception gone wrong, and that's essentially what happened here. Miquella has encased himself within this cocoon to attempt his own rebirth, which does not appear to be going well. He has been kidnapped and brought to this place by Mohg, who tries and fails to conceive a dynasty of blood with Miquella in service of an outer god called the Formless Mother. We're 1 image and 10 seconds of a trailer into the DLC, and we've already seen 3 visual references to birth and motherhood: wheat, egg, and pelvis. And we have 2 narrative references: Miquella's rebirth and the Formless Mother. Let's continue. Again, more wheat, and then one of the most tantalizing images in all of the DLC promo material. I'll go into this image in more detail later, but let's just note that this woman appears to be pregnant. So we have our 4th very obvious symbol of birth and motherhood, a pregnant woman. Finally, we are introduced to Mesmer, the big baddie and demigod of the DLC. And our first introduction to him is seeing his snake tail and hearing him say the word mother. There has been a lot of speculation around Mesmer's parentage, but I think most people at this point assume that he is the son of Marika and or Radigan based on his red hair, his name starting with an M, and his use of the word mother in the context of lordship and light. Interview excerpts imply, but do not explicitly confirm, that Mesmer is a child of Marika. As a side note, it is widely believed that Melina is also Marika's daughter. File names from the game seem to confirm it, and the dialogue implies it, and yet Melina mentions Marika and her mother, but never says that they are one and the same. I only bring this up because, if Melina is not Marika's daughter, that means there is no instance in the main game at all, no dialogue, no item description, in which anyone or anything refers to Marika as mother. So hearing Mesmer use this term the second that we first lay eyes on him seems significant. I am certain that FromSoft chose this introductory line deliberately, encouraging us to keep birth and motherhood on the mind, and insinuating that Mesmer's parentage will be of narrative importance. Given the choice of image for this piece of dialogue, a snake, I suspect that his parentage will also be viewed in-game as profane or sacrilegious. And if, for some reason, all of those hints didn't convince you that birth and motherhood will be the central themes of the Shadow of the Erd Tree, then the story reveal trailer should resolve any of your remaining doubts. In our very first shot, we see the hand of Marika reaching into something very mushy, and pulling out golden strands that are almost certainly a rune of the Elden Ring. I think it is so interesting how many people interpret this image as a womb, even though we can't really tell with any certainty what we're seeing. Still, the vibe is there, isn't it? It just seems like Marika is robbing a womb. The words in the trailer clearly intend to add to this effect. Seduction calling to mind sexuality, and sexuality being required for conception. Many have speculated that this thing is evocative of the godskin apostle robes, and I do see the resemblance. Whatever or whoever this turns out to be, the image is definitely yonic in nature, and that seems intentional. We then see Marika holding up this rune, presumably giving birth to the Golden Order, and or the Erd Tree, and or her status as a god, and or the lands between. This is why the trailer mentions the beginning. Something is being born here. According to the dialogue, multiple things are being born here. Golden Shadow, at least, and maybe more. Finally, the most striking image in the entire trailer, maybe any trailer from FromSoft. We get a long shot of Marika holding up the rune, standing in some sort of liminal space, a place teeming with viscera, with an opening shaped like a birth canal. This is a threshold between two distinct realms or realities. It's worth noting that this shot is where we have seen Marika at her most powerful. We've heard tales of her former glory, but this is the first time we're actually seeing it. There's a strong statement here. Marika, holding up a rune that she's seemingly robbed from a womb, enshrined in the gaping maw of a birth canal, is more powerful now than she has ever been. This image could allude to many things. Marika's ascension to godhood as a sort of birthing process, a woman's power coming from her ability to birth life, Marika's role as matriarch in the lands between. I suspect there's many layers of meaning here, and so this seems like a good point to move into some unhinged theorizing. Everything from this point forward is speculative, and I'll be approaching this from two perspectives. Straight up lore theorizing on the one hand, and more of a macro-thematic analysis on the other. Starting with the lore, I definitely think that the betrayal mentioned in the story trailer is a betrayal of conception and birth. Someone got pregnant by someone they shouldn't have, and the result of that pregnancy had major implications for the world. I'd like to return to the portrait from the gameplay reveal trailer. This image has such a striking composition that tells us so much about the relationship between these two figures. The expectant mother looks coy, a slight smile on her lips, her eyes hidden from us, as if carrying some sort of secret that benefits only her. The baby, most likely. While situated behind the seated man, compositionally she is above him, indicating that she is somehow higher status. From this position, she rests her hand on his shoulder, asserting some sort of influence on him, giving the impression that she's the one behind the scenes orchestrating things. If we look at the man's face, we notice that he is strikingly aged, almost desiccated or sickly. His brow is furrowed. He looks pained, concerned, sad, almost like he's pleading with us through the painting, warning us of bad things to come. The baby, most likely. The pregnant woman appears to have dark hair, so she may not be Marika, but if Marika can change her gender, I'm sure she can change her hair fairly easily. So I think it's entirely possible that this is Marika and a prior consort, and that she perhaps got pregnant by another person or god and is gestating the offspring of that union for her own personal gain. Perhaps she is using the man in this portrait for his political power, while secretly conceiving a child with someone else. That's a fairly straightforward theory, and it may be correct, but I think this next one is much more fun. We know from the main game that Fia gestates a mending rune for the Elden Ring. She conceives and gives birth to a rune that will fundamentally alter the Golden Order. I think that's exactly what has happened here. Someone, not Marika, gestated this rune, and one way or another, Marika robbed them of it. So who gestated it? I do think that this robe is evocative of the godskins. And I also think that the stitching and color on this looks similar to the stitching and color of the pregnant woman's robe. Visually, these images relate to one another pretty heavy-handedly. A pregnant woman and a thing that people just intuitively interpreted to be a womb. I also think it's safe to assume that this is a royal portrait. The man is seated on a sort of throne, and in Elden Ring, there aren't very many portraits of people who are not royalty. I think it's safe to say that this woman is a queen. I think that this might be the Gloam-eyed queen, and that might be the reason that her eyes are hidden from us. But I don't think it's Melina. I know I'm going to make people angry with this, but I have never thought that Melina was the Gloam-eyed queen. I'm in the camp that the Gloam-eyed queen was not an Empyrean to succeed Marika, but was a rival Empyrean to Queen Marika. After all, Ranni only mentions 3 Empyreans of the Age of the Erdtree: her, Miquella, and Melania. I think it is possible that this is the Gloam-eyed queen and Marika's sister, and probably her twin. I think that the Gloam-eyed queen, Marika's sister and rival Empyrean, gestated a rune that Marika stole after her sister was defeated by Malekith. Furthermore, I think that this heap of bodies could be the corpses of skinned gods, and that Marika used her sister not only to gestate a rune, but to provide her with thousands of god corpses as sacrifices so that Marika could give birth to the Erdtree and become a god. We know that Miquella was attempting to grow the Halig tree using his own blood, indicating that blood may be a required sacrifice for growing such a tree. And if one god can grow the Halig tree, imagine the potency of thousands of god corpses. Now I'm going to get even more unhinged. I think that when the trailer says Gold and Shadow were born, that this could be a reference to Godwyn and Mesmer. That somehow they are interdimensional twins, one being born in the lands between and the other in the lands of shadow. I know there are holes in this theory, notably that Godfrey is, supposedly, Godwyn's father, but Mesmer does seem to fill a role similar to Godwyn's in the Shadow Realm, fighting Queen Marika's wars for her. And of the 5 children we know of that Marika birthed as a female, Godwyn is the only one who isn't a twin. I know this one is a bit of a stretch, but I still think it's fun to think about. The other birth-related betrayal here, I think, is more metaphorical. Regardless of who or what this is, the trailer wants us to see that Marika leverages the power of birth to ascend to godhood. Marika very well may be betraying someone, but she has also betrayed her role as mother and creator. Because Marika is a really bad mother. I believe the game wants us to judge her as such, and I think this may be central to the DLC story. I know she seems to love Godwyn, but I think it's more that he's the most direct instrument of her will compared to her other children. I think Godwyn pleases her, which isn't exactly love. His death brought her to the brink, but I think that's as much a reference to her anger at the return of destined death than any abiding affection she had for her own son. We also know that the mausoleums are full of her discarded children, and she basically tells her offspring, "Do something with your life or die for all I care." Marika's motherhood is bereft of love and affection for her children, which contrasts to other examples of mothers in the main game. Rennala loves her daughter, Bok was loved by his mother, Fia wants to lovingly mother the undead. I don't think Marika's lack of love, loyalty, and nurturance are just some weird, unknowable aspect of her godhood. I think they are a distinct weakness in her power, a flaw in her golden order, if you will. I think this is shown narratively and symbolically in the game. I believe it's one of the reasons that all of the children she mothered in her female form are cursed. Godwyn after death, and all the others at birth. I wonder, based on the latest trailer, if this isn't due to the betrayal. Was this betrayal of birth a sort of stain on Marika's order? A bug in the code that could never be fixed, damning all of her children in the lands between? If she did steal what was gestated by another, if she became a mother and god by theft, does this explain why she didn't have the power to love her own offspring? I do think that whatever the betrayal was, Miquella has come to the lands of shadow to rectify it. In fact, I think that Miquella can be thought of as a sort of mending rune for Queen Marika herself. It's well understood by players and some NPCs that Miquella is the best candidate for godhood, the only demigod who we may actually want to see assume power in the lands between. Miquella, who of all the demigods strikes the most resemblance to his mother, seems to represent what Marika cannot: love, loyalty, and nurturance. It's almost as if he's some pure, unalloyed version of Marika herself, offering acceptance and sanctuary to those who have been rejected by grace. He does seem to embody the love of a mother. We know that he's on a quest to be reborn, to rectify the failure of his accursed birth. It seems to me like Miquella is trying to right the wrongs of Marika's perversion of godhood and motherhood, and I assume he will do this by birthing something himself. How exactly this will play out, I don't know, but I can't wait to find out. But wait, you say. There's no way FromSoft is just trying to give us a touchy-feely, warm and fuzzy message about love making a just ruler. That doesn't quite fit their MO. I agree. The initial trailer told us that Miquella wields love to shrive clean the hearts of men, and that there is nothing more terrifying. I think and hope that the DLC will explore the dark side of this power, the terror and tyranny that can be tied to love. Given the framing of Miquella's ability to compel affection as terrifying and fearsome, I suspect I will not be disappointed. I even wonder if his followers, these sort of disciples, are meant to become his blood sacrifices. They choose to follow. But does one really have a choice when compelled by a god? One last thing. In the gameplay reveal trailer, it looks as though Miquella may be standing in the birth canal that we see Marika in at the beginning of the story reveal trailer. It's difficult to say for sure because the ground is blurry, but I think it may be the same place. What's interesting is that Miquella is imbued with a golden glow. I thought he'd turned away from the Golden Order and divested himself of his golden flesh. Maybe this is where that happens. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I know my speculation is unhinged, and given that it's Elden Ring, who knows if any of this will pan out. But there is no doubt that this DLC is focused on birth and motherhood. FromSoft is basically bashing us over the head with the imagery and dialogue. This was my first ever Elden Ring video, so thank you for watching if you made it this far. I hope to make more Elden Ring content following the release of the DLC, so subscribe if you'd like to see more of that. If you think this is totally bonkers and you have other theories to contradict mine, I would love to hear them. Please leave them in the comments below. And now, a quick thank you to my patrons.
Extraordinary. The mark of a true patron. I am Elenia, Blade of Miquella, and I want you to subscribe to this channel.